Coach Matt here. This is Coach's Handbook.
This the best time. Why you wanna be an outcast? Numbers don't lie, you gain a lot from this math class. It takes time to be great, you can learn the lesson. Blood, sweat, and tears, heartbeat of a champion. Big or small, your heart is the biggest weapon. So follow before you lead and water and plant your seeds. When it's all said and done, you be the best they ever seen. So listen to my catalog on this coach's blog.
Welcome to another episode of A Coach's Handbook. As always, I'm your head coach, Matt. And today our guest has coached several sports in different levels. Coach Rob Moughton, thanks for being on the show.
Hey, thanks for having me. I appreciate this opportunity. Really appreciate it.
No, I'm excited to talk to you. Last week I had Coach Mike on, and I have a lot more understanding of softball now than I do, and
Yeah.
I'm sure we'll touch
I
on
see
that,
that.
but I'm excited to know that you coach basketball because I know basketball. So I'm a huge basketball fan, and I've coached it, so I don't have to ask all the silly questions like, what is a basketball? We don't need to get into that.
Got it.
Before we get too far, though, what are the sports that you have coached and at what levels?
So really, I've coached a little bit of everything, believe it or not. I coached a little bit of soccer, helped out with my son and daughter's ASO teams through the years. I've coached basketball at all levels. Started really like when I was in high school. I coached what they call our biddy basketball program with the high schoolers. We helped out with that. I coached middle school girls basketball for a couple years. This past year, I helped out with our girls varsity program. And then Little League, started coaching Little League well before my wife and I had children, and then started back up again when my daughter was 5. And actually, this is the first year we won't be coaching Little League. My daughter is 14 and my son is 12, and neither of them are playing Little League. I've coached my daughter's travel softball team since she was 9. So she's 14U now. So that's been the main focus the last 7 years, whatever it might be. So, and then I coached Rocket football, believe it or not, like right when I got out of high school, my freshman year in college, they needed help coaching a Rocket team, a 10, 11-year-old team. And a buddy of mine, we coached, and then I coached Rocket football for like 6 or 7 years after that. So just kind of a little bit of everything.
Awesome. Well, okay. So I'm changing up my second question because I didn't know all of this about you coaching before your kids. So what made you pursue coaching? What was the reasoning other than they needed a coach for Rocket football? Like, what made you want to go coach?
I just think the love for sports growing up. When I was young, my family, we were pretty involved in sports. I played 3 sports all the way through high school, and it must have been I just wasn't ready to let it go. And my perspective on coaching when I got out of high school, when I started coaching, I was 19, 20 years old. My perspective is a lot different now, obviously, than it was. So I just got into it and coached, like I said, right out of high school. And it was more of a win mentality as it was, a lot of different perspective than it is now. So that's I think I just couldn't let it go, I guess, and got back into it.
Well, okay, let's get into your past then a little bit. Why are you saying that your family was a sports family? What does that mean to you as a sports family?
Well, growing up, we played. My older brother and sister, they played a little bit of sports, and then really when I played, I played Little League. Started out with t-ball. I played biddy basketball. Played that all the way through high school. Same thing with Rocket football. And my mom and dad separated when I was little, but my dad really kept us in the sports, taking us to a lot of games, whether it be Lions games, Tigers games, Pistons games, watching on TV, going to games in Chicago. I can remember going to watch Michael Jordan play when Michael Jordan was actually a rookie and then broke his foot. So just kind of growing up through that. And then just I see it in my son now. My son's 12 and he's nonstop talking about sports and stats and watching everything and texting me, which we couldn't do back then, obviously. But, and that's exactly how I was when I was younger. So, and then that just kind of evolved and it's still in me now.
Very cool. So is there a specific memory you have, like a very special memory that you had as a kid that really stands out now that you that was sports related?
Yeah, I can remember going to our first Lions game, and we're diehard Lions fans, so don't hold that against me. So you learn a
My
lot of
son
life
is
lessons.
too. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So I can remember going to our first Lions game. It was December of 1979. I was born in 72, so that was 79, and they were horrible then. They've had some good years since then, but and watching them in the Silverdome, and we sat way up at the top, and they played Bob Greasy and the Dolphins. The Dolphins were really good back then. That was my first memory. Back then there wasn't ESPN was around the corner, but really you were just watching games on CBS and NBC and Thanksgiving, and if you were lucky, your parents letting you watch Monday Night Football. So being able to go to that first game, same thing with going to Tiger Stadium. I couldn't tell you who they played the first time we went there, but just walking into that stadium and then just open it up and seeing, 60,000 people or whatever the hell those are some of the memories that I'll never forget.
That's awesome. What are all the different sports that you played when you grew up?
So my first, I started playing t-ball at Vicksburg Little League here. That was my first. I was 5, and I started playing t-ball there. I played Little League all the way through middle school, and then I just stopped playing. Probably stopped playing for some of the same reasons that a lot of kids, like with baseball, you don't like getting hit by the ball.
Oh yeah.
Slower game at times. I just didn't have that love for it. I played basketball starting in our youth leagues, which, like our bitty basketball program, started out like in 3rd grade. I played basketball all the way through my senior year. And then the same thing with Rocket football. I started playing that probably when I was 9 and played all the way to my senior year. I did dabble in soccer. My first, that was when I was 5, we played a little ASO. I lasted 1 season. I was horrible at it. And just lost interest. So
When you played a football through high school, what position did you play?
Well, I played like in our program was called flanker, kind of a wide receiver, and then a backup quarterback, and defensive back, like a corner. So I didn't play a whole lot. My senior year played a little bit more than I did my junior year, but those Friday Night Lights memories are something I'll never forget.
Oh, I remember watching my oldest played through high school, and it was fun. Just everybody, getting together and just cheering on your team, and even when he was on the sideline, still like getting really into it and stuff. So I totally can see that. What about
Friday nights? Yeah.
What about basketball? No, what about basketball?
Same thing. Well, I played. I was more of a shooting guard. I wasn't the quickest, and I wasn't the best ball handler. So I wouldn't play point, but I play pretty much shooting guard all the way through to my senior year. And then actually basketball was probably my first love. Like, I did play, like I said, played baseball, played Little League, played football all the way through high school, but I'd never lifted weights or anything like that. It was basketball. I went to basketball camps when I was younger, in middle school, high school. And and I look back at it now, I just wasn't quick enough. And if I would have known what I know now and would have worked and lifted weights and did, maybe trained a little bit differently, maybe I would have but it'll play after high school. But those are the type of things you just don't realize as a kid. And that's kind of why, getting into coaching and kind of, reflect back on some of your experiences, your life lessons, you've been through it, and try to instill that back in the kids and say, look, you only get one shot at this. So, let's work at it. So if I would have known then, what I know now, maybe it would have been different, but.
See, I hear working out and I think I wish I could do what I did back then, because maybe I wouldn't look the way I do now.
No, I'm with you. I have
a coach's body, let me just say. All right, so let's fast forward to now. And you kind of touched on this a little bit, but I want to know, you're at a huge, your dad made you have a huge sports family. You loved sports, you loved playing it, you loved watching it. What does sports mean to you now that you're older, and what does it mean to your family?
Well, I mean, you can cut that in 2 different ways, I guess, like as far as watching sports and just seeing the, the challenges and the teams going head to head and the competition, watching TV on sports or in person, our family loves that. They love the Friday Night Lights. They love going to games, just the atmosphere that's around watching sports. Just that excitement of being there. And, as far as coaching goes, it means a lot different. it's different now to me than it was when I was younger. I think coaching, you see it, and I think you touched on that a lot of your podcasts. It's something that took a while for me to realize that coaching, life lessons, what these kids learn in sports, and you can use different incidents that happen in sports, whether it's success or a failure, and you turn that into a life lesson and seeing these kids grow on and off the field. And I know you've touched on that with a lot of your coaches. And I love that. Like we always say, hey, yeah, we're playing to win. They're keeping score, but winning is not the end all. It's not going to define us. If they're keeping score, we're playing to win, but I'm not going to compromise anything we do, our morals, our ethics to get a W. So like in softball, when we play, everybody plays, everybody bats, we rotate in the field. Yeah, we may do some things to make sure to help us, give us the best chance of success. But you see other teams that will, they'll sit two girls in a game. They won't play, they won't bat. They'll just sit there. They'll sit out the whole game because that's given that team, maybe a better chance to win. So we always say we're not going to compromise it. They're not learning anything doing that, sitting and not being a part of it. And if they go out there and they make mistakes, so be it. We'll learn from it.
Absolutely. How about with your family? What does sports mean to your kids and your wife?
Well, and that's, now we're come kind of full circle to as far as like my daughter coming through middle school basketball, which I coached recently, and my son, and, just kind of seeing, I can remember when I was their age, and I can remember what, like if I didn't get the playing time that I wanted or something happened, and I can remember how I handled it, which was probably incorrect at the time. So I can remember, like if, something happens with my son, I can remember a couple of years ago in a football game, he didn't get to play as much as he wanted. He rotated quarterback and didn't get as much playing time. And as much as you want to be that parent and, you just got to take him aside and talk to him away from the field and let him know. And, tell you just got to keep grinding, keep working harder. So I think that's the same thing with us is like, we want to push our kids and their work ethic is building our kids' work ethic for life, and using sports as that tool, learning the lessons and say, hey, if you don't like losing or you don't like not playing, then it's what are you going to do about it that matters the most? Okay, you're going to quit? You're going to not play? No, you're going to go out there and you're going to work harder. That's what you're going to do. So if you lose a game, no one likes losing, but it's what you do about it. What's the most important. So I think in a full circle, using sports for our children, our own kids, and just that life lesson and driving them through, like, hey, you're trying out for a team. That's like a job interview, so when you're going down the road, and I know it's hard for the kids to understand that when they're 12, 15 years old, but that's just the way it is, so we went through it. Let us kind of guide you a little bit and believe in us. And in the most part they do. So that's good.
Well, you brought up tryouts. I mean, my daughter's been doing tryouts for a couple of years now, and she just turned 10. I mean, to try to explain, the nerves that these kids, have to go through at such an, I mean, and all of my girls on my teams are so good. Like, don't be nervous. Like, you're fine. This is just, just we're subjecting them to that so much earlier now, and it's just kind of crazy.
Oh, absolutely.
But they learn from it, and like you said, they grow up stronger. So
I agree. As long as us as parents and as coaches handle it the right way, that's their successes and failures of, well, first of all, did they make the team? Did they not make the team? How much playing time did they get? And using that to kind of teach them, the life lessons along the way, then, hey, everything's good.
Absolutely. So same question that I had with you, going back to when you were a kid and what was your favorite memory? What is your most favorite memory with your family? The most memorable time that you can think of?
The sports related?
Yes, sports related.
Okay, probably. And again, we're like I said, we're big Lions fans. So every year before COVID hit, we'd go to training camp, Lions training camp.
Yeah.
And take the kids over there, and we do that, and just seeing the, like you see the guys on TV or you go to the games and you see them playing, but you don't really get to interact with them and actually getting, going to training camp. And we had, my son, my daughter, they're younger then, and having some of the players pull them aside and, play catch with them or sign autographs with them and just see that joy on our kid's face, and obviously not every kid gets that opportunity to be able to do that, but being able to interact with, hey, then I saw him on TV, like, 2 weeks later, or I talked to one time they got their picture taken with Matthew Stafford's wife, and, and shook hands with Matt Prater and did different things, so kind of those memories. But going to training camp, that was always a special time.
What a great experience that you gave them. I've actually, when I was in high school, I got to play a pickup game with a few of the San Antonio Spurs. So
Nice.
I know what that feels like to say, I was 5'10" and they were 6'11", and it just didn't go well. But
yeah, absolutely.
So you've mentioned that you coached middle school and high school basketball now.
Correct.
Getting into more of the game, what are some of the bigger differences that you've seen between the two, going from middle school to now high school, from a coaching standpoint, other than skill wise? I mean, obviously they're going to be better, but what are some of the differences while coaching that you've noticed?
What I think, I got a very unique opportunity with these girls that I just coached. So I coached the girls that are seniors at Vicksburg right now. I coach them in middle school. So I coach them in
Oh, wow.
7th and 8th grade, and fundamental. We pounded that every day. We had 2-hour practices, and we did an hour and a half of fundamentals. Didn't really get into, too much. We'd spend a little bit of time on our offense, but we'd fundamental, defense, rebounding. Very great group of girls, very athletic. I could fall asleep on the bench and they would win a game. They didn't need me. They were above that. Good group. And then being able to kind of reunite, I was asked to help COVID situation. So I was asked to help assist the varsity program this year with a good friend of mine's the head coach, and I said, absolutely, I'd be there when I can be there. So seeing that now, and then coaching with them this year, and just seeing their growth as far as their basketball IQ, like seeing the same group of girls come off the court 5 years later in a game, and they're pointing out, hey, this is what I'm seeing, this is what they're doing on defense, or this is what they're doing on offense. And just that to me was great, because the same girls, that I had 4 or 5 years before that, just learning the game. And that's one of the biggest things when I tell my kids this all the time, when you're watching basketball or whatever you're watching on TV, don't just watch the game. Try to see things you can pick up and learn, and increase your basketball IQ. So that was one of the greatest things I think about this year, coming back and helping that same group of girls and just their basketball IQ growing, and that was fun to see.
So you've got some very good positives out of that. And this might be a little telling. I don't know. We'll see how the question goes. But was there a challenge going into high school that you weren't prepared for? Was there something that just popped up and you're like, oh man, I never thought I'd have to do that?
No, and it's just a game. It's just a different game from going. So I coached middle school, like I said, the same group of girls, 7th and 8th grade, and I thought, oh man, we're pretty good. I got this. I understand. I coached basketball all through, and I played basketball all the way through, and then to step back after about 4 years and then come in at a higher level and try to help. And the game evolves every year. The X's and O's evolve. There's different offenses, there's different defenses, and just seeing that. So that was challenging to me. I'll be honest. That was, and not being able to put in 110% of my time because of other softball. That was my number one commitment. So I would, I'd be at all the games, be at all the practices for basketball that I could, but the X's and the O's was a little bit different, and that wasn't a little bit intimidating to me. And I didn't have the time to sit down and study and watch enough film that I could. So, so I don't think I was as helpful as I could have been if I would have been able to dedicate more of my time to it. So that was probably the only negative. And it was just, I wish I could have done more. So
we're a learning podcast. You learn from your mistakes, you learn from your failures, you learn from your losses, right? So
exactly.
How would you approach it next year if you were asked to do it again?
If I was asked to do it again, I know I would dig in and, just to be able to help, I would study more before the season started, because once the season comes and you're flying, especially this year with COVID, we were playing 3 nights a week. We were playing Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Practices Tuesday, Thursday were really just walkthroughs because the girls are gassed, their legs are tired. So it's more mental. But I would start, if I knew in September, I would be able to start studying film, not only our film, but obviously our opponent's film and picking up little things, and that's fun, as being able to see something on film and be able to, prepare the team for it. And then that actually happens in a game. They're going to run this play at this time, or when they come out of a huddle, this is what they usually do. They usually bring pressure, whatever it might be. But yeah, if I know ahead of time, I'll prepare, way ahead of time. I kind of got, COVID just messed everything up this year. So
But the bottom line, always be prepared.
exactly. And I tell my girls that on the softball field, you hear it, it's 99% mental. If you're prepared where you don't have to think on the field, you just react.
Mhm.
The ball's hit, you're ready to go. You know where you're supposed to go with it before that it's hit, where you don't have to think about it, just react. Then that's 99% of it.
Okay, now we're at softball. You've coached travel softball for years.
Yep.
Which do you find easier or more fun? Do you basketball or coaching softball?
Honestly, softball to me, and I never thought I would. Like I think even Coach Mike talked about that, Mike Model, saying how it's such a fast-paced game, and like you watch Little League, and we talk about that too. A lot of kids get drained out of Little League because it's so slow. But once you get up into the higher levels of softball and start understanding the intricacies of the game, and I know Mike tried explaining that to you, which is great. Um, like once you start seeing that every pitch is different, everything, so it's a fast paced game. So yeah, that's my love now. And not to say I would never get back into basketball. I'll help wherever anybody asks, but yeah, softball, it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun.
I will say after that interview, I've never watched baseball and softball other than my daughter playing and when we went to like watch the Tigers play. But I will have a whole different perspective going into it, and maybe it will be a lot more enjoyable to me because of that, just knowing that I have to look for those little things, because
There
to
you
me
go.
it is slow.
Yeah. Oh
But
yeah, sure.
now that the way both of you have described it, I'm like, oh man, it that sounds like exciting. Like, I
You
want.
might still be bored to tears, but
No, I love sports. It'll be
yeah,
fun.
it's fun. It's a fast game. It really is. You can get, a 6 inning game can last, they have time limits in tournaments, and it goes by fast, especially when you're coaching. When you're watching, it's probably a little bit slower, but yeah, it's a fun time. It's a fun time. I love it.
Excellent. Okay, so we can ask this question two different ways. I started it as a basketball question, but we could also look at it from a softball perspective too. Halftime, or maybe what is it? What is considered halftime in softball? Like,
Really, just in between innings, you have,
okay,
in between innings, in between half innings is when you're able to gather your team.
so you're up by 10 points or you're up by several points, right? What do you discuss in the locker room, or what do you discuss in the dugout when you're
It's
up?
funny. A lot of the kids, my girls in softball think this is funny when we talk about it too. And I always say, you can't let up on an opponent. I mean, they're 12-year-old girls or 14-year-old girls on the other side. Same thing in basketball. You're up 20 points. You got there because of the effort. You got there because of what you've been doing. You have to continue to do that. Again, winning isn't the end all, but like I said, it's a lot more fun to win than it is to lose. It's not the end all. But if you want to continue with that, yeah, you just have to keep bringing the energy. Don't let that other team back in. Kind of got to put your foot on their throat and play your game. It is what it is. And when you have a team down, that team wants to fight and come back and win just as much as you do. And you got to hold them at bay. So you've got to just remember what got you there and continue to do that.
Great answer. Let's switch it around. You're down by 10.
So you're down by 10. That's where the coaches come in, I think, and got to make some adjustments, depending on if it's X's and O's or strategic with the girls, in softball, what girls are in what spots. Probably not that. It's probably more what we're doing as coaches. And really, you've got to learn. Same thing with basketball, too. You're down 10 points. You've got to learn, hey, what this team is doing to us. And being one step ahead of your opponent, I think, is what's one of the most important things, especially in basketball, knowing what they're going to, every team goes into halftime. Every team makes halftime adjustments. Knowing your opponent and knowing what they might do, whether they're up 10 or whether they're down 10, and just being able to be ready for that. With softball too, it's, hey, you always talk about pitchers and softball and what you're facing and what she's doing and what we've got to do. And that's so mental, getting the girls to understand that, hey, you can hit this girl, or we can do this, we can do that. just to get back in the game. But we always talk about, one of my big sayings is, in my girls that I coach, our girls, peaks and valleys. We talk about peaks and valleys all the time. And I tell them, and they probably are tired of hearing it, but I say peaks and valleys, it's really easy to lead and have fun and enjoy when you're at the peak. Okay. But when you're in the valley and you're down 10, okay, you have to have the same energy, enthusiasm, everything that when you're up. Otherwise, you're not getting out of that valley. So there's peaks and valleys in every game, every sport, every inning, every tournament. And you just have to bring the same energy in. And then that's the only way to get out of it, is to have your teammates go back to back. We talk about being in the rabbit hole. There's a valley and getting out of that rabbit hole. And once they do that once or twice, and they realize, oh, that's how we get out of it. It's really easy to lead when you're up here, but and then they start believing more in themselves and each other, and that, and in what we're trying to establish with them as the culture of our team.
You just had an analogy in an analogy. I love it. Rabbit hole in your valley.
Yep.
You got to get out of. Perfect.
Yep.
I will steal that peaks and valleys this spring, just so you know.
There you go. It is.
I will give you 100% credit.
I'm sure I stole it from somebody out of one of the books I read or the podcast, something like this that I've seen. So,
well, let's get into that. Okay, so you've read some books. What makes you, like, what do you do to prepare for different sports? I mean, you've coached a bunch. What have you done to get prepared for those?
Well, I think, it's twofold. I think you have the X's and the O's, and we talk about that with basketball, being away from the game for a couple years and coming back into it. And the X's and the O's, they're changing all the time. They're changing all the time. So you have to be prepared for that side of it. And then I think you have to prepare every day for your team, just doing whatever is best for your team, whether that's having the best practice schedule, the best drills, getting them ready, getting them prepared for success on and off the field. So I think it's kind of double-edged as far as that goes, staying on top of it with the X's and the O's. So you're putting them in the right position to win. But then, you see it with, and I always say girls are easier to coach than boys. That's in my opinion.
100%. I'm with you there.
And each kid is different, whether it's a boy or a girl. You can reach each kid differently, or you will. I mean, some kids are the same to a certain degree, but just being able to, be prepared for that. And that's where I think a lot of the reading, the books that I read, like right now I'm reading, John Wooden's, his Pyramid for Success. Reading that, I think I actually read that about 6 or 7 years ago. That's a book, a coach from 1960, 1970, but just to learn from some of their theories. And that's a basketball coach, and some of those analogies that I'm taking into coaching softball, coaching basketball in this modern day. So just being prepared for that. And I think reading these books kind of prepares you for any weird, life lesson, something that might come up in the dugout, or it'd be like, oh, hey, I have a great analogy for that. Or I have a great, I read about this. This is how I can handle this, rather than, and it's fine if you come back to that girl 3 days later and say, hey, you remember this problem that happened? This is how I think we can handle it. So I just think being educated as much as you can, and being there, being prepared for your team. So.
Very good. You've coached your kids as well, correct?
Yes, sir.
What do you find harder, coaching your kids or coaching a team without your kids?
Coaching my kids. And it's taken me, and I'll give you a little analogy too, like my daughter, I'm pretty hard on her. And again, I don't care. Like we always talk about effort. As long as your effort's there, I don't care if you make a mistake. If your effort's there, another analogy that I'm going to go full circle here on you probably, is just you can't be perfect. Okay. Yeah. You're bowling, you can do a bowl of 300 game. You can have a hole in one. There's other things you can be perfect. You can throw a perfect game in, but you're not going to be perfect. Come on. Let's just break it down, and trying to get these kids to understand that, I tell them, as long as you're perfect in your effort, everything is good. As long as at the end of the day, if you went out there and you were perfect in your effort, that doesn't mean you won. That doesn't mean you went 3 for 3. As long as your effort is perfect, everything's good. So, trying to get that, to myself, I can remember when my daughter was little, and this is at the ASO Fields in Portage, and she was probably 6 years old. I can't remember. And just kind of getting on her about things, going back to the car after a game, the complete opposite of what I would do now. And then I picked her up and put her in her car seat, and I realized, what am I doing? I just put her in her car seat after I just kind of got on her about soccer. She's got a juice box and something else, and I put her in her car seat, and I just kind of wrote her a little bit about her effort or whatever it might have been. So that one was a real eye opener to me. But yeah, with both my kids, as long as their attitude and their effort, hey, we're golden.
Do you find it hard to differentiate your kids from the rest of the team?
Yeah, there at times it is different. Like I said, I'll be harder on my own kids than I am on other kids, and then sometimes that's not fair to my own kids. I just how it is. You just expect more out of them, but I think the last couple of years I've kind of been able to reel that back a little bit and kind of see, hey, there's 11 of them out there. They're all the same.
Mm.
So, like you said, you can connect with each one differently. You just have to figure that out. And our team's really unique. Our softball team's really unique as far as travel goes because we're 14U now, and I think we've got 7 of the same girls that we did when they were 10. We
Oh,
just
wow.
haven't had that much turnover, So I think that's good. I think we've got players, families, which is very important, that have bought in and they believe what we're doing with the girls. Into my own family, and so, like I said, I told you I'd go full circle and kind of, but
So let's talk about you real quick. Whether you're coaching softball, basketball, any of these sports, what type of coach are you during a game?
yeah, I think we talk about like that with the effort. As long as like I said, they're keeping score, we're playing to win, but winning's not going to define us. And really keeping that in check and knowing what you're here for. Um, and there's been times like during softball games where you get caught up in the game and you kind of forget about, hey, yeah, we do, we got to make sure we're doing this. I want to get, this player at this position to get them this experience, whatever. So just that's the type of coach I think I am. Just kind of, like we talk about with practice and with leadership lessons and different things like that, using the game to teach them life lessons and get through. And, like in softball, hey, you swing and you miss once, that's okay. You got 3 strikes, you get out. Okay. You're going to get up again or whatever. But that's like, just kind of encouraging them getting through. We have a couple of sayings, like control the controllables. And I have to really keep that in mind with myself too. And control what you can control, which is your attitude, your concentration level, and your effort. That's ACE is what we call that. And that's the same thing with me. I'm not a coach that's going to go up and argue with an umpire, argue with an official. If I talk to an umpire, it's really just to get kind of a definition of hey, what happened, because
Sure.
99 times out of 100, they're not changing their call. They're not going to change their call. And I don't want my girls, with the body language, I don't want them questioning any calls, whether it was verbally or nonverbal. That's something you can't control. So control the controllables. You can't control the umpire. You can't control the weather. You can't control any stupid calls I might make during a game. So just do what you do and do it to your best of your ability with your perfect effort. And that's just the way I coach. I think inning after inning, we take it one step at a time, and then we just build 1 game, 2 games, 3 games, and then we have a weekend. So, and then we roll reflect after that.
I like you. You seem to have a very good perspective of yourself, and you talked about parents buying into what you do. You have parents' eyes on you every minute that you are at practice or that you're at a game, right? What do you think the parents would say as far as what type of coach you are?
Well, I hope, and I think they would say that, they know I'm there for their kids. They know I'm there for their kids because we've done enough. We do through Next Level, we do leadership lessons to help prepare. Like we have indoor practices, but at half an hour before practice, they do leadership lessons with my wife. And that's something hopefully they'll take with them their whole life. We set goals for these girls. We work with them. We spent this winter a lot of time saying, okay, these are your personal goals. These are your athletic goals. We're talking educational, daily goals, everything. So I think they would say that they know that I'm there for them. I put a lot of time and effort in with the girls, with their family, my own, girl and family, and just wanting to see success on and off the field. We're going to push them. They have goals. Each and every one of them wants to go on and play softball at higher level, whether that, high school, college, Olympics, they all have dreams. And my job is to help them fulfill their dreams on the softball field. But it's also, I know the big picture and getting them to understand the big picture where, hey, you're not getting into school if you don't have this grade point average, or if you're getting in trouble, or if you're doing this, so pushing them along, off the field, which hopefully when they're 45 years old, maybe they can reflect back and say, okay, that's what he was talking about.
Oh,
So
yeah.
yeah, yeah. But I think, yeah, we've got a program here where I think we've, and we're a one team program. So, we're pretty good in this area, in my opinion. Not to pat the girls on the shoulder too much, but pretty, success. But like you said, that doesn't matter. You can have all the trophies, you can have all the wins, but it's all about the life lessons and taking that on when they're older, and then maybe they can instill that in their children.
Excellent. What part of coaching do you dread the most?
Well, that's a tough one, I guess. Like, I guess just, we've had a few things over the years where you talk about you want to put your team in the best place for success, whether that's preparation or that's some decisions that you've made in a game. Because yes, I tell them all the time is I don't coach to win. I love to see them win. I love to see the excitement on their face when they win and they have trophies or whatever. The life lessons and everything are more important than that. But just, failing my team. And I can remember, in middle school basketball, we were undefeated. We had an opponent we were playing at home that had a girl. This girl's going to play in North Carolina, the girl from Kalamazoo Central. You may have heard of her.
Mhm.
And we played her in middle school. And I drew up a play at the end of the game. We were down 1 point, drew up a play, and it didn't work. And I got out coached. And I sat in my truck for 20 minutes, half an hour after the game in the parking lot. And I was just like, I failed my team because I got out coached. I wasn't prepared. He was that one step ahead of me. He knew what we were going to do, and he blocked that. And we lost. And then there's been, other cases like that on the softball fields. Like, well, you know how it is. If you go back in a game, you can go back, and it's the same thing with the girls, which I don't want them to do. I don't want them to go back and think, well, if I did this, in the third inning, if I did this in the first inning, let that be on me. That's me. If I made that decision. And that's the biggest thing is I think, not being there for them or making the wrong decision that ends up, hindering any chance to success that we have. That's probably what I dread most.
Hardest part about coaching your kids?
Is I think, like I said, like being hard on them and pushing them, and then, coming home and, just having to separate that coach to dad. Like my daughter today, I went out and I did some work and I came back and I'm like, hey, we're going to go pitch later. Okay. And she looks at me like, okay, you tell me what, I'm going to do, which is great, but like just getting them to understand, yep, this is dad, this is coach. Coach wants you to go pitch, but also dad wants you to go pitch because dad knows that you want to be successful as a pitcher and down the road. So, in again, I think sometimes like I've coached some of these girls since they were 8 years old and have come really close to them and their families. And I just always had to, my family comes first, obviously everybody, same thing. And just getting them to understand that, hey, I'm here for you guys first and foremost, off and on the field. But this is a part of the whole deal is, helping everybody else out as much as we can. And, they say it takes a village and getting them to, understand that. But I think, at the end of the day, coming home and I'm dad. So
Taking the coach hat off, putting
Yep.
the dad hat on.
Exactly.
I live with that every day with I've coached my daughter for years, and
Yep.
Next year will be the first year she has a new head coach, so we
Yep.
get a pro coach, so that'll be interesting
There you go.
to see. I'm still coach, but I'm something else too.
Yep.
So.
Oh, exactly. I hear you.
So we always ask that, what's the hardest part about being a parent coach and this, that, and the other, but I don't ask this enough. What is the best part of being a parent coach?
Well, I think being the best part of seeing a parent coach is like, we talk about that, like with my daughter, she's working, she's pitching, she's doing what the best she can. My son, he does football, he does basketball, but just like seeing some of their work, you have to put in the work in order to get what you want, so we set the goals here, you're here, what are you going to do to get to your goal? And just seeing, and it's not just about the success, it's about getting them to understand that it's going to take you to do this amount of work to get here. it's not just going to naturally happen, but actually seeing them put in the work and taking the steps and then see the success and then seeing the happiness on their face, whether it's a win or a loss or whatever it might be, or a milestone of pitching or throwing a touchdown or, making a going 2 for 2 at the free throw line with my son, those different things, but just seeing the happiness on their face. So that's the biggest thing to me.
Excellent. All right. Last question before we get into overtime. This one, and if you can provide an example, that would be great. I started, this was going to be an overtime question, but I really want I didn't want it to be short. I want you to get into this a little bit.
You got it.
Have you ever embarrassed your kids while coaching?
Absolutely.
Please give me an example, because I can give a bunch of my own.
It was heartbreaking. It was probably one of the worst days of my coaching. We were playing in a NSA softball state tournament, and hopefully if my daughter hears this, she'll understand, because she'll remember a couple years ago, and we were in the state semifinals. And I've always said that I will never take a kid out, besides a pitcher or in the middle of a game. I will never take a kid out of a game. And my daughter was struggling at second base and she made some errors, but the most important thing was I had to put my dad hat on, and I could see that her confidence, she had no confidence. I had to rescue my daughter at this point, and I went against something that I always preached that I would never do, was take a kid out in the middle of a game. So I switched it out and subbed with her, and I sat on the bench and I cried with her during the game. And like I said, we ended up losing that game. Wasn't because of her. It just, things didn't happen. Things didn't go the right way. That was the toughest day of my coaching career. And she was fine. That next day, that night, she was fine, but I'm sure if we sat down and talked about it now, she may reflect on it. I told my team, I went against everything that I've ever preached, but at that moment I had to get my daughter. So, and that probably embarrassed her, being taken out in the middle of the game. But I think in the big picture, she'll see, now had I wrote it out, and it was a tough one. If I leave her out there and, she has success, that's great. But I didn't want to ruin her at that point. She was playing hard, and that's all that mattered, but she was, she just had no confidence. So that was tough.
Wow. I was asking for a funny anecdote, and I got a really serious answer, and it was a great story. I mean, it talks about our flaws, right? We do. I mean, you ride that fine line of being a parent and a coach, and knowing her personally, and knowing, and I've done the same thing, where I've pulled, my daughter out of goal, and, or out of, a shooting spot, because I know she's frustrated. And
yep.
So it wasn't what I was hoping to lead toward, but I think we got a lot more out of it. I think we actually learned something from it.
I embarrass them every day. So
okay.
We took talk for a half an hour about just what happened yesterday, probably. But
no, I'm glad you went the direction you went.
Yeah, sorry.
No. All right, you ready for overtime?
I'm ready.
All right, here's some fun questions for you. Hopefully they can be quick. If you want to get into them a little bit more, you can. First one's really simple, but may make you think. What is your favorite sports movie and why?
Oh man, I think my favorite sports movie is probably Major League.
Oh my gosh, I love that movie.
Yeah, just the one-liners. I mean, it was great. It's a great story, but in the end, you don't remember the story about the Cleveland Indians going from, 0 to win, going to the World Series or whatever. You just remember the one-liners, and and my buddies to this day, that I don't remember what year that movie came out. I was younger. And
88.
Yeah, so I was in high school then. So the sayings, the one-liners that you come from Major League, like "nice catch, Hayes," like. My kids don't understand that. They don't think that movie's funny, so, but you can still chuckle to these days when you say some of those things. So Major League's great.
I never watched baseball as a kid. I never played baseball. That is one of I love watching that. I even will sit through the second one, because I just, it's still funny to me. I don't know. Good choice.
It's a riot. It's a riot.
All right. What drill do you do at practice doesn't matter softball or basketball, that your kids just hate?
So we'll do a bucket drill. We call it buckets, and the coaches, we get to sit on a bucket and roll them ground balls, and they hate it, especially when it's outside. And we always tell them with the heat, we'll turn the speaker on, and we'll say you got 3 songs, so that's going to be 10 minutes or more, and it's just constant ground balls up the middle to the side, whatever it might be, fielding. And we, the biggest thing we tell them is, your first rep when you're fresh needs to be just like your last rep when you're tired. So we try to instill that in them, because like you said, when you start getting tired, your fundamentals go, you don't get low, you don't get, you're not prepared. Your mind starts to wander. So they hate that, especially outside. And we'll do it for 10 minutes and it's constant running, fielding, jumping, throwing. But yeah, when we say bucket drill, you can just listen and you can hear about 5 or 6 of them moan and groan. But in the end, they all work hard. They bust their butt, and we love it because we can sit on buckets and roll ball to them. So,
yeah, so you're sitting on buckets. So therefore, not only are you making them do work that they don't want to do, but you're doing it very lazily that they want to do.
Yeah, there's no lawn chairs available, so we just got to sit on those buckets. And yeah.
Great. All right. Your wife is into sports too, especially probably watching her kids, I bet. In the bleachers. Yep. Both of you sitting next to each other, who is louder? You or your wife? Her?
Her. Yes. In a positive way. So, that's, how it is. You got to take your coach hat off when you sit in the bleachers. And one of the biggest things is like when my son started playing tackle football, flag football too. Like I started our flag program here at Vicksburg, when he was 5. And I kind of ran that, so I wasn't able to coach him through that, but I was able to see him, and just, you just got to just put a sucker in, keep your mouth shut. I'm positive. I'm not going to say anything, but, but she's definitely louder in a much positive way. So I love it.
Very good. One-on-one, who wins a game of horse between you and your daughter?
Whew. Probably her. It's just the way it goes. I can't shoot like I used to be able to. That's one thing. Like I said, in basketball, I wasn't the quickest. I played shooting guard, but I could shoot pretty good. But either my son or my daughter, they'll end up winning that. And we do it a lot out in the driveway too. More so with my son and my daughter. Those two will go out and play against each other, and that always turns out ugly. But yeah, no, she'll win because she's just smarter than me. And you play horse, and you come up with creative shots, and she knows her old man can't physically do anymore. So yeah, she'll get me.
Oh, good. She's got tactics. I like that.
Yeah,
she is a smart player.
Yep.
All right. Last question of the interview, of overtime as well. Favorite pre-game meal?
For coaching?
Yes.
Oh man. That's a good question. When we're getting up in the morning, actually, because as being in soccer, you can play in soccer tournaments, play all day in the heat. Yep. So you've got to eat right. So I have to make sure though, I'll stick to my scrambled eggs. I got to get that in me in the morning, get that going. And then one big fault of me is I get the energy drinks going in the morning. So yeah, I don't drink coffee. So it's probably bad, but yeah, I get a couple monsters in me, my eggs, and I'm ready to roll. So
eggs are a good one. My daughter, doesn't matter what time her games are, that's her favorite pregame. She asked me if it can be dinner time. She says, and have a late game, and she's like, can you make me a couple eggs? And I'm like, there you go. There is the protein.
Yep. Yeah, exactly.
Coach Rob, this is your time. I like to give you guys all time to just give a piece of advice to whoever you want, whether it's a piece of advice to coaches, to players, to parents. This is your minute of time to kind of say what you'd like to say.
Okay. Well, I appreciate this time. This has been great. And I've learned a lot just from this, but I think as coaches and as parents and we just need to understand that this is for our kids, that, at the end of the day, like you said, we play, we're keeping score, we're playing to win the game, but winning, and I tell my girls that all the time, winning and losing is not going to define us. Just because you lost a game, that doesn't mean you're a loser on or off the court. But I think the biggest thing is, use sports to prepare these kids for life. Otherwise, I feel like I failed them. If I haven't given them, if I just drive in there and we're going to win tournaments, we're going to pile up trophies. Who cares? It's all about life lessons. And I feel like I failed my team, whether it be basketball or softball, if I'm not preparing them for their future, whatever their future may be, whether it's in softball, just showing them that I'm a good dad, being a good coach, being a good person, doing the right thing, and getting them to understand, along the way that, hey, unfortunately you only get one shot at this. And the choices we make now on and off the court, off the field, unfortunately you can't go back to high school. There's a lot of things you can go back and do, but one of them is not high school. So, make the right decisions right now, on and off the court. But and to the parents and the other coaches, like, hey, be there for your kids on and off the court, on and off the softball field, whatever they need. They know they can come to you. I've had a couple of girls that play for me now, write school papers and talked about their coach, talked about me a little bit. And, that's good to hear. And I love that. Not just for me to pat myself on the shoulder, but just know that us as a coaching staff are getting through to our players the correct way. So, in a nutshell, it's all about life lessons.
Very, very good. I love all of that. Makes so much sense. And we need to make sure we're doing this for the kids. We're not doing this for ourselves. We need to take our ego out of it. That's, like I said, I'm switching out of the head coach role next year. I'll still be a head coach, but not of her team. And, it'll be a good lesson for me to step back and, get there. So that's a lesson as well.
Yeah, definitely.
Coach Rob, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it. Enjoyed getting to know you. Good luck with your daughter's teams and everything like that, and your sons as well.
Yeah, same to you. I appreciate it. Good getting to know you, and hopefully we chat here in the future. And I'm grateful to do this anytime, and then looking forward to seeing more episodes out here.
Absolutely. Me too. I hope to have plenty more episodes.
You got it.
All right, everybody. Thank you for another episode of A Coach's Handbook, and we will see you guys next week. Have a good one, people.
This the best time, why you wanna be an outcast? Numbers don't lie, you gain a lot from this math class. It takes time to be great, you can learn the lesson. Blood, sweat, and tears, heartbeat of a champion. Big or small, your heart is the biggest weapon. So follow before you lead and water and plant your seeds. When it's all said and done, you be the best they ever seen. So listen to my catalog on this coach's blog.